So much to talk about on the Undercut this week. I can't do it on my own. Well, I could do it on my own, but that would be a pretty boring show, to be honest. James Moffat, welcome back to the studio.
It's been a while, Noons, but nice to be back in the studio and looking forward to what we've got to discuss on this week's show.
There's just a little bit to discuss. How was your air restrictor on the weekend in Trans Am?
I could have done with the Will Brown one, I think. Certainly.
The new one, not the old one?
The new one, yeah. Certainly. Not a great weekend for us in Trans Am land, but you have those weekends in motor racing. Sometimes if you went racing for all the good times, well, you wouldn't be racing for that long. So,
what was your take on the weekend overall, Queensland Raceway? We'll talk about it in our burning questions a bit later on about its place on the calendar moving forward, but it looked like a good crowd. It looked like that the Heartland Supercar fans were there for the Ipswich round.
Yeah, you hit the nail spot on there, Noons. Backing up from last year with Queensland Raceway returning to the calendar in 2025, crowd was vibing again. The facility was presented well, looking good. So, I think it's going to be hard, which we will touch on later in the show for it not to be on the calendar in future years.
We will touch on that later in the show. Our Castrol Performer of the Week is how we always start things here on the Undercut. So many potential candidates for Castrol Performer of the Week for me. There were great performances up and down the pit lane in supercars and in the support categories. Harry Jones was on fire in Carrera Cup. There was plenty going on in the Toyota GR Cup. There was plenty going on in Trans Am as well.
Yep.
But for me in supercars, you cannot go past Will Brown being the performer of the week, and purely not just because of what the results were on the racetrack. That's been well documented. But the way he lent into all the air restrictor stuff in the podium by having it on the champagne bottle and on the trophy.
Drinking through it.
He brought that buzz and energy. And, of course, he's been flat. He's been flat as a biscuit for the last 3 or 4 rounds. But he came back. It was like he had re-arisen, not just in performance, but the inflation that gave made him off track. What a performer that he is for the championship. And if he's going well in his race results, I think we're getting that more often than not outside the car.
Yeah, for sure. And, it was probably a lot of pressure, obviously, the way that it all unfolded pre the event. Triple Eight coming out being so strong about, the performance loss that Will had for the entirety of the season up until Queensland Raceway.
Did they need to do that to back their driver?
Well, it was a risky strategy in my opinion because it would have been very, very easy for Will to sort of come out and still perform like he had been because Queensland Raceway, the nature of the circuit's very, very competitive there, as the championship is at most circuits. But, you could be a 10th and a half off the pace at Queensland Raceway and you qualify deep in the top 10 or outside the top 10. So they put a lot of pressure on themselves to come out and perform, but that's exactly what they did. And particularly Will Brown. And, exactly to your point, he really embraced it in a positive way. And he's a larrikin. He's that type of character. And when he's up and about, he's good for the sport. And it was good to see him back on form.
I did enjoy some of those hijinks. That was good fun. And leaning into this thing that has caused so much turmoil for he and for Andrew Edwards, his engineer, and for their team to try to figure out what was going on. And now they've finally got an answer to all of this was great. Who was your Castrol Performer of the Week, Fonzo? Because there was plenty going on, plenty of candidates that really could have got a nomination here. Brock Feeney winning the Sprint Cup against the odds, Matt Payne's performance up until it went wrong on Sunday, Brody Kostecki was there or thereabouts and in the mix all weekend. But you've gone for one of the rookies as your Performer of the Week.
I have, and plenty of, like you said, plenty of people that could have easily got a nomination. I'm going to give an honourable mention to a fella that probably hasn't been heard of, and that's Brock Payne. He won the second race in Trans Am, his first race victory in Trans Am. So that was a very notable performance.
So where's he come from?
Exactly. So
TA2?
I believe so. Has been competing in that platform and was there in the Trans Am field over the weekend. And, picked up a race win. So nothing to be sneezed at. Congratulations to him and his team. But my Performer of the Week is Ryland Gray. 2 top 10 qualifying positions over the weekend across the 3 races, 11th in race number 27, and then picked up career best for race finish of 7th in race 26 and backed that up on Sunday with 8th. So I think, for a rookie season, very, very hard for Ryland to come in against a high-profile teammate in Brody Kostecki, and that's been sort of well spoken about and, maybe his lack of performances throughout the year. but I think he's really starting to, find where he needs to be with how he needs to set the car up, how he needs to drive the car, how he needs to execute his race weekends. He was sort of quick in Perth, had a couple of good results over there, but to back it up in Queensland Raceway, I think he's really starting to hit his straps.
It's still going to be a bit of a hit and miss for young drivers like this, isn't it? They will have these weekends where things go right. I mean, he was off the road at one point down in the gravel at turn 3, so there will always be the good and the bad, but he's definitely starting to find his way. But Enduros now, he's going to be the lead driver with Tony D'Alberto backing him up in that car, so he's got a good opportunity those next couple of rounds.
And to back that up, Noons, also the team did a phenomenal job to change an engine between the races on Saturday. So he had actually carried a bit of a drama towards the back end of the race in the first race on Saturday. And, team performed an engine change. I think they got him out 50 seconds before pit exit closed.
Like 52 seconds or something along those lines, which is cool.
Big effort. So, equally, the team performed just as well.
So you have got Ryland Gray. I have got Will Brown. There was plenty of Castrol performers of the week all round at Queensland Raceway. But as always here on the Undercut, there's always something to look at. And that is coming up next with Burning Questions. Burning Questions this week brought to you by Ford Trade Club. Moff, it's the best place to get genuine Ford and motorcraft parts at exclusive Trade Club prices. Let's bowl into it. First burning question. Has Ford ever been at shorter odds to win the Bathurst 1000 in the Supercars era than in 2026?
I would have to say no, with maybe the exception of 1977 Noons. That was a pretty handy year for the Ford Motor Company in terms of racing activities. But I'm not quite sure the betting market was open back then.
I'm not sure it was such a thing as it is potentially now. I would say to you, James, that this is the greatest opportunity. I would say actually this way. Ford has never been as raging hot favourites to win a Bathurst 1000 in the Supercars and V8 era than in 2026. And it's for multiple reasons. The depth of the teams, the quality of the teams, the performances so far this year. I mean, have a look at the lineup. Triple Eight, Dick Johnson Racing, Groves, Tickford, supported by Blanchards. When you look at the list of who are the favourites for this year's race, the list is full of those cars and teams there's Toyota, obviously. Yep. You have to put them in the mix with Walkinshaw's. Beyond that, though, I go back to 1990 and the days of the Sierras as being that was the race that was Ford's to win that they didn't get done. The GDR was brittle and still unproven. The Commodores were reliable but not fast. And on the day, it actually worked out that the Fords didn't win. So we're not writing off everybody else for this year because you never know what happens at Bathurst. But I think I can't think of a V8 era Bathurst with Ford as raging hot favourites.
Yeah, I have to agree, Noons, because I think if you look at it from who else can win other than a Ford Mustang?
You don't need many fingers.
Let's roll through potential candidates. If you were to look on the Chevy side, I feel like they probably, based on form throughout the year, have one combination that you could say, yes, they're a genuine chance.
Anton.
Being the Anton
Lee
Holdsworth car. Outside chance, you have to put Reynolds and Courtney in that category. But beyond that, we know every time we go to Bathurst, Erebus always present a fast car.
They've had a season from hell.
Exactly.
And Premier's had a season from hell, but they were the two teams that performed there last year.
100%. And obviously the weather created added an extra element of surprise there last year. So the Walkinshaw guys you definitely cannot write off in terms of that's a team that knows how to win that race, but there's a big question mark over the reliability of that. We saw an issue with the B-spec engine, unfortunately, at Queensland Raceway. So those guys are going to be scrambling in terms of reliability. I would suggest that their car performance will be competitive up there. They've got great drivers and they're a great team. But let's go through the Mustang side of things. Feeney and Percat, combination-wise.
Yep.
Like, very hard to go past.
Brown and Pye.
Next door in that same garage.
Yep.
Will Brown, back on form, got the same restrictor as everybody else. Horsepower is a place you need, is something you need at Bathurst. So, tick. Scott Pye has proven that he knows how to get the job done in terms of the co-driving role. Then let's jump across to Penrite Racing. Matt Payne, Will Davidson. Geez, as a combination.
Tick.
Exactly.
Kai Allen, Tim Slade. Tick.
100%. So then you move
Brody
a bit
and Todd,
further.
we haven't even got onto them yet.
Exactly right. So heading into the endurance races, they're going to be a fierce combination.
Oh, and what about Waters and Winterbottom? I mean, we haven't even talked about them
where
yet.
do you stop? And then,
correct.
if you want to start rolling out some outside chances, I look at the Golding Stanaway combination from
Dark
BRT.
horse.
Real dark horse.
Dark horse.
Especially based on last year and Golding's performance in the rain. If it rains up there again, and we all know Stanaway's prowess in the rain, and don't forget, he's won the race before.
Yeah,
so
a lot of
he
people
knows.
forget that.
Yeah. So, anybody outside of the Ford camp in terms of the other brands, Toyota,
they need a day to go their way.
100%.
If it's a regular Bathurst race where it's relatively dry, there's a handful of safety cars, it sort of flows to a general flow. If it's not a Ford winning, it's a shock. Probably, likely. I mean,
the way this year has
there's too many question marks over everybody else, and there's too much strength on the blue oval side.
Absolutely.
James.
Aaron.
Are there more questions than answers in David Cauchi rejoining Triple Eight?
Well, this came as a bit of a surprise, to be honest. Not something that I saw coming, but when it sort of did come to surface over the weekend, you sort of did raise your eyebrow a little bit at, reading further into the circumstances around it. The real curious one to me is the fact that he's, at the moment, only going to be part-time, which that doesn't really seem like Triple Eight's go, in my opinion.
Ever.
So
when have they ever had
a part-time
engineer on a main
engineer
game car? I get it for Super 2 where there's, 6 rounds a year and not a huge amount of testing, but there's more than meets the eye to this. And their appointment of a part-time engineer at Triple Eight for Will Brown in the second half of the year, he's still in the game for finals, he's still in the game for the Enduros. It raises more questions than answers, and there was some paddock theory going around on the weekend. I'm not sure if this one floated out to the Trans Am paddock where you were parked with GRM, but there was a theory going around that until the air restrictor issue was found only recently, that Andrew Edwards, the engineer, Will Brown, they're all questioning what the hell's going on here, to the point where were they plotting, and this is just the paddock theory getting around, were they thinking to replace Andrew Edwards or move him into another role because this wasn't working and the results weren't flowing? And then they found the air restrictor issue that says, well, that's not Andrew Edwards' fault. Look, maybe he and the team are part of the issue that they didn't sort of figure out that was what was the problem, but it's not a person problem or not an engineering problem or it's not a driver problem. And now that they've got a problem, because if they're thinking, well, we're going to bring this other guy back in, how do we shuffle the decks? Would you find it curious that they've had a role there for over 12 months since Pete Ringwood moved into the Jeremy Moore role as the homologation team
director
for Ford, that they hadn't filled it, and now they fill it partway through a season and then leave their driver with a part-time engineer? It feels very un-Triple Eight the way this is all played out.
It does, and that theory is definitely plausible from the outside looking in.
And the theory was that, therefore, once they realised, there's actually an air restrictor issue, that they went, okay, well, let's move Andrew into that role and David can be the race engineer on a part-time basis. He's got a full-time position with a business in Queensland that runs a range of Bridgestone tyre centres. So he's the chief operating officer for that business. So, and then where do they go from this at the end of the season? Do they convince him to be a full-time race engineer again? Or I don't know, but there's so many, this just raises more questions in the whole scheme of
and
things.
I'm going to suggest that Andrew Edwards is going to be heavily involved still on that Triple Eight side of things, more so back at the workshop based on David Cauchi's, part-time employment. So there's definitely more to it than meets the eye. And another thing, it feels like there potentially is a bit of tension there in the camp. And I picked up just the snubbing of that Will Brown gave Jamie Whincup in Victory Lane
a couple of times
on Saturday after he won that race. So it was quite obvious, and a little bit awkward, if I'm honest, viewing it. So there's clearly a bit of unrest there, but internally they've now got to come together and get on with the job, because that whole restrictor thing would have taken its toll on a lot of people, and clearly it was getting
months on end who are questioning, what have I done wrong?
Themselves.
Have I lost the ability to drive a race car, to engineer one, to set up one? It must have been such a conflict of emotions for everyone involved. I mean, you're a driver. You go through you've been through all of this over the years of when things are going well and things aren't going well. I can't imagine which is the overriding emotion when you figure this out, that this was the issue. Is it relief that you've discovered something's wrong? Is it frustration that you've given away all these points? Is it anger that it's a bit of everything all wrapped into one, I imagine.
You've summed it up perfectly there. It's all of those things you just mentioned all wrapped into one. And, I wonder how Will would have felt on Saturday night after, breaking through for that victory with everything that's gone on throughout the year. I wonder what was the overriding emotion at the end of it all. Was it relief, or was it, a bit of anger, pissed off about the whole situation? Only Will can really answer that. But, it was a fairy tale result for those guys. And, couldn't have gone any better. But, geez, there was a lot riding on the line, wasn't there?
Yeah, he's back in the fight, in my mind, for the championship here, because if he suddenly lights it up Chaz Mostert style through the finals, he's just got to keep getting through the next couple of rounds. Obviously, he's not hooked in yet to I think 4 or 5 of the drivers are locked into the finals because of their points position. They might not officially have that golden ticket, but they're going through to the post-Enduros.
And let's not forget, it wasn't just the race victory on Saturday afternoon. Pole position.
Well, he was even happy. He was even happy qualifying strongly, not getting pole position.
Yeah.
So then he gets the pole, and it was like all that emotion of the last 4 or 5 months just came on out. Like it came on out every time things went well on the weekend. But he's back in the game. But questions. It's very curious, that whole Triple Eight scenario with David Cauchi and what unfolds from here. You were on the ground at Queensland Raceway, racing Trans Am for GRM. Has Queensland Raceway, Moff, done enough in your mind to earn its spot on the calendar for 2027?
Well, I would answer is what more does Queensland Raceway have to do to remain on the calendar? Because being at the event, the crowd was great. The facility is in great condition. Tony Quinn presents that place as well as any other circuit in the country. So really, what else does QR have to do to stay on the calendar? From a spectator's point of view, you can't get a better circuit. You can park yourself up on the hill there at Turn 1 and see the whole circuit. So for me, it's yes, we've got to return there. It really, we keep sort of referring to it as Heartland V8 Supercar.
It is.
Or Supercars territory, and it is. So, we were texting over the weekend, and there was still some issues with traffic getting out of the circuit. But I responded
25 years,
and I responded to you. Well, that's a good problem to have, right? Because that means there's people there, people there watching the races. That's what we want. So, if that's the biggest problem that facility has in terms of getting people in and out of the event, well, press on, get on with it. Yeah, big tick for me. And I guess over the years, Queensland Raceway has had the knock on it that maybe it's a simple circuit. But I can tell you from a driving point of view and a setup engineering point of view, it's far from that. So it's actually very technical. There's a lot to sort of piecing together not only the perfect lap from a driving point of view, but also, getting the car to work across those 6 corners. So, keep it going for mine.
It draws a crowd. It's Heartland. Yep. And the racing's pretty good, no matter what the category was on the weekend. All the Supercars racing on the whole was pretty good. And it's got that, you can over and under people on the run out of those corners. There's that, they've kept the bumps in the place. Turn 2, there's a fair bit of that going on.
Yeah.
So it's got character, it's got appeal, and it's built a history over 25, 26 years.
99 wasn't the first
1999, that very first time. So it's all the things that it needs to be. And it's kind of set itself in 2 years as that ending point for the Sprint Cup. So the calendar chops and changes so much year on year or every 2 years. Let's find some places and some things that build a vibe that is the end of the Sprint Cup before we go to the Enduros. Mate, don't give that to some other track somewhere down the line. But there's so much to unfold with the calendar moving forward, and race and the teams agreeing on how many rounds and how much money they'll be paid and how that all works out. But it would be a travesty if we remain at 13 or 14 rounds next year and Queensland Raceway is not one of those. It would be quite phenomenal. And if for some reason they don't do a deal and we're back to 12 rounds, then what goes? I would like to think that this isn't one that goes, but we'll wait and see. That's obviously well out of our hands. But not much more that Tony Quinn can do. I mean, some of the cars on display from his collection, the Simtech Formula One car, there was a Glenn Seaton V8 there on the weekend.
Yeah, no, 95 Peter Jackson EF Falcon, that looked really smart.
Did you spot the Winfield sticker on it though?
I did, yeah.
Triple challenge.
Yeah, absolutely.
Back of the day.
Yeah.
Back of the day. James, is the Tuesday post-round Queensland Raceway test session a wasted opportunity for supercars?
Well, wasted is a pretty strong word there, Noons. So I don't think it's a wasted opportunity because testing is so valuable to the teams now because of the restrictions that we have in place. You know, they only get the opportunity to test twice a year.
But it's mandated where
exactly.
and when they test.
For me, that's the waste. I don't think the all-in test day adds any more value than how we used to go testing, say either at Queensland Raceway or Winton.
It's about how you're going to go testing with GRM for the Enduros because you're not doing the Bend, you're just doing Bathurst as a one-off.
Yep.
You'll do your own tests at Winton during September, I presume, and you're not part of this overall test session.
Yeah, that's correct. So we have a test day slated for towards the back end of September. The reality is we wouldn't have been sort of prepared and ready in time to get up there to test in the all-in test at Queensland Raceway. And I think for our situation with the GRM wildcard, being able to go up to Winton is much more advantageous for us. So, I just question whether this whole all-in testing is really doing anything. You know, like commercially, does it add any value? I don't think so. The fact that we're testing at Queensland Raceway post the race meeting there, again, what benefit is that? I'm not really sure. I think going back to how it used to be where you can sort of test when you want, which, you know, the way it all unfolded was, you know, those test days were generally shared by the teams going to that test track. The Victorian teams would generally test together to, absorb and share some of the track hire costs. So if you were to try to say, is there any benefit in the whole field testing together? Well, yeah, probably, I assume that the track hire cost should be significantly less when it's spread across 25 or 26 cars. But
clearly the thought process was that, hey, if everyone's going to be at Queensland Raceway and in the same place at the same time, well, while we're there, just back it up and run on Tuesday, which, as we're recording this show, that test has been and gone. But I get that theory, but I also look at it from the other lens from a media perspective and from a build-up to these races. So between the Test Day Queensland Raceway, we'll have the Bend 500 race event. They'll know, apart from your car running and the wildcards with the opportunities they've got to run, there's no cars on a track until Thursday at Bathurst. So if you stretch it out and let everyone kind of do their own thing, some teams will end up on the same days together, and that's okay. There's more fodder. There's more content. There's more build-up. It's like having a month leading into the NRL or AFL Grand Final without any teams practicing or training. It's kind of a little bit crazy and that's just one lens on it. And I understand that there's a racing perspective and a cost perspective, but we get told so much about how testing costs money and that race events cost money and X kilometres on the cars costs money as well. But they keep finding ways to spend money in other areas that probably don't help the game overall, yet putting cars on tracks at test days more often in the next 2 months to give more news crews more abilities to do more stories, more broadcasters the chance to do more content, more socials, more everything can only be a good thing ramping to the Enduros and the finals at the time of year that it really matters most.
Yeah, and, you know, the whole all-in testing to me makes a bit more sense at the start of the year, you know.
Season launch-wise.
Season launch.
Sure.
You know, you're all going there. But if we break it down to maybe a bit of a cost point of view, most of those teams and drivers would have been at Queensland Raceway, let's say, worst case Wednesday before or Thursday before the event. The way the test day is being the Tuesday after the race meeting, then majority of the teams, if not all the teams, conduct a sponsor ride day.
Which is
the following day, the Wednesday.
Yep.
Because a lot of their sponsor groups have customers in Queensland. So that's sort of a Wednesday to Wednesday exercise of accommodation, feeding people, all those things. That all adds up fairly quickly.
Mm.
In years gone past, when we raced at Queensland Raceway, the traditional ride day was on the Monday. So you hang around Sunday night, stick the ride seats in the cars, do your sponsor ride day on Monday, you're out of there Monday night. So that's 2 days already less accommodation that you're paying for. So, yeah, like I touched on before, I don't think the post-race meeting group all in test day really is adding anything apart from perhaps adding a bit of extra cost in terms of accommodation and bits and pieces like that. So I'd much rather see us be able to sort of test, when you want. Okay, ideally, yeah, we have a few more test days because I know from a co-driver's point of view, it's getting harder and harder to get laps in the cars. So that's a challenge. It's all right for the full-time guys that are in it week in, week out. That's what they're doing. So they're attuned to the cars. But, for me, there's still a bit of work in that space.
Yeah, should be more testing overall in the sport. I'm not saying back to the old days, 12 test days. They used to grizzle in the late 90s when they got told, we're only getting 12 test days for the year. Just to get 3 more would be quite amazing. James, let's talk wildcard, let's talk Bathurst, let's talk GRM. But does Supercars need a full-time Gary Rogers Motorsport on the grid? I would argue strongly that Gary Rogers Motorsport, for the good of the sport, should be back full-time on the grid next year or at some point in the future in the Supercars Championship.
Well, I'm probably a bit too close to the whole that side of things, Noons, to answer that unbiasedly. So you've sort of
answer it with bias then.
Well, yeah, I think it's it would be great to see, but I think it's probably a long shot. This whole wild card thing sort of came a little bit out of left field. It sort of developed and bubbled away and sort of just didn't naturally happen because things like this don't just happen out of the blue. There's a lot of things in the background that need to come together and a lot of investment, mind you. So, yeah, and, making that next step back to full-time competition, I don't think is necessarily on GRM's radar, but you never say never, But, I think the way that the wild card, when we announced it, was received by fans, but the media as well. We certainly felt like it was a positive reception to it all.
Understatement of the year.
And Gary was such a character, and his legacy is probably a little bit underrated, I think. And us going back to Bathurst is really, I guess, a great way to sort of tip the hat to that legacy and really honour it, and certainly be doing the best we can to honour it in the best possible way.
The word you mentioned, legacy, is the one that's springing into my mind. Of all the teams that are in all the categories outside Supercars that have the legacy, the history, the facility, the manpower, the resource, the goodwill with the fan base out there, I don't think when you put all of those things on the table as the judging points, anyone comes close to knocking off GRM. And I was thinking about this the other day, and I kind of thought, and this is with no disrespect to Trans Am, the series, the promoters, it's a great category. I really like Trans Am. But I feel like Gary Rogers Motorsport's kind of wasted just being in Trans Am. I know for a time that they were in TCR and the S5000 thing and the Trans Am thing and running categories and the ARG era. That's all changed now. That landscape's very much changed. So I feel like that team, that capability, that love that the fan base has is kind of wasted not being at a higher level more often during the year. So that's why I could sort of see that GRM being, if you announce that tomorrow, the fan base reaction would be just as big, if not bigger, than the wildcard announcement. And we saw on our website the content, the numbers, the clicks, the posts, the comments. People absolutely loved seeing this team back on the grid for that big race later in the year. And obviously, there is the back story of Gary passing last year. There is the backstory of trying to get Nathan Hearn to the Bathurst 1000 that's now going to happen. There is the backstory of some familiar sponsors and brands and a livery that, from what I hear, is going to be pretty similar to what we've seen before with them with their Bathurst winning cars. There's a lot of goodwill here on the table for this program and what could potentially, even if they become a regular wildcard runner, enduro runner later on, but gee, I'd love to see it full time because for the very least of which, I'd love to see what Baz could come up with for his on the grid pranks and stunts because he'd be well up for it for 12 or 13 times.
Anybody needs to see that. So, but
has he been plotting something? Is he working on something?
I think if he's plotting something, he's keeping that to himself. So,
low key.
It wouldn't surprise me if he does do something, but he's keeping his cards pretty close to his chest.
So there's no cornered off parts of the workshop where saunas are being built or anything like that in the Volvo days?
Not that I have seen, but there is, Gary's office was upstairs in the workshop, and I know he's been going through that from time to time, so he might be building up some ideas with some things.
The dress-up box might be up there.
Exactly.
He might find a couple of things. Hey, tell me about this because I asked you here on this show, a couple of months ago, what you were going to be doing on October the 11th. Was it going on back then? Was it a real prospect back when I asked you that?
It was certainly, we're working away in the background, but, at that time, I think I said I didn't know what I was doing, and I was being completely honest and transparent with you. Because nothing was, confirmed, and these things they take a lot of time and effort in the background to get to the point where we could announce something, and a lot of investment along the way. And you touched on goodwill, goodwill is great, but it only goes a certain way. You need to commercially things need to come together, and you need to pay for it, make it viable. So. It's been something that has been happening in the background for quite some time, and we had a few curveballs along the way, and initially purchasing a car was never on the radar, but a few things unfolded. It was
buy high when you can buy.
Yeah, so initially we were talking or discussing with Barry Ryan and Erebus to sort of lease a car through them, and that sort of eventually became evident that couldn't happen. So that's when the opportunity, I guess, arose to purchase a car through 888. And, from there, it was really a decision that Barry had to make as to whether he wanted to sort of go down that path and whether we could sort of make it all come together and work. And, the way it's unfolded, we're going to Bathurst.
We're on.
And, I think the car will look fantastic. You touched on it. It will definitely have a retro theme to it. And, some of the renders that we've put together so far, look really great. And I think, the fans are really going to respond to that as well, seeing it on the grid or on track up at Bathurst. And, there's still a bit of time between now and then to unfold. But, it's all come together. A lot of work has gone into getting us to this point, but, the work is there's still a lot of work ahead of us. So, exciting. Good to be back or still on the grid. And, I'm just really looking forward to being able to contribute, lend my experience to the program and contribute in a positive way, and not setting any expectations on where we want to finish or what we want to achieve. Just go up there, enjoy the experience, take on the experience. And, there's the element of helping guide Nathan Hearn through his first Bathurst 1 start. So that's not something that is lost on me. I remember when, I had my first start back in 2010 alongside Stephen Richards. So I'll be looking and happy to help Nathan as much as I can through that experience.
And what's the go in terms of tests before you get to Bathurst? 2 days at Winton? Is that the breakdown, or 1 day? What's the story?
Not entirely sure. Definitely 1 day. Whether we can get a second day in there, I'm not entirely sure how that works in the rules, to be honest.
Maybe you need to have an evaluation day. Can you evaluate yourself?
I probably wouldn't fit into that category, but, Nathan certainly would. But I think, it wouldn't be unreasonable to request a second test day given everything. But yeah, whether that happens or not, I'm not sure.
What about GRM at Bathurst? This is not a new thing. You drove full time for the team. You've done a GRM Bathurst or two in your time, and you've been with them in the Trans Am program since. They have a different way of going about things in the past, accommodation-wise and all that sort of stuff. Do you have to room with Barry this time around, or do you get your own? Can you pull the driver card and say, no, I'm getting my own room. I'm not sharing with the boss?
Well, fortunately, I've got the family coming up, so that means that I will not have to share a bed with Barry, thankfully. But yeah, well, not normally when we do travel together, we share a room together, not so much a bed together. But yeah, we will. Yeah, it'll be nice to have the family there, the kids, and my wife Leah will be coming along. So who knows? This might be my last Bathurst, but it might not be. So if it is, then to have the family alongside will be special.
Approach it like it is. It might not be. It's the Garth Tander theory from last year. I mean, he went there preparing for it that it might be and treat it like it was without knowing that it was, and it turned out pretty good. So if you take that theory into it, you never know what might unfold at the Magic Mountain in October for the Repco Bathurst 1000. I tell you, this weekend, the Apex Steel Muscle Car Masters is back at Sydney Motorsport Park. It's a bit of an Undercut-themed program this weekend, wherever you tune in on Fox, SBS and KO, because Jack Perkins and I are part of the coverage this weekend for the return of a very popular event with some classic muscle cars, Group A and C. There's a bunch of cool stuff there. Here on the Undercut, let's go back into the vault with some classic metal from Sydney Motorsport Park. Some numbers, we love some stats, we love some history here on the Undercut. And James, it's time to crunch some numbers. But before we get into a bit of Matt Payne chat from the weekend, let's crunch some numbers for you. So if you drive a Camaro, a Chevy at Bathurst this year,
yes,
that means you've driven in Supercars Ford, Nissan, Volvo, Holden, Chev. I'm running out of fingers here. That's it, 5. It's just about a record, or it's got to be right up there equaling some of the greats in terms of how many brands of cars. So can you drive a Toyota next year and get to 6 and probably establish the record?
I could be available for hire. So
wildcard.
Yep. Well, who knows?
BJR.
But it would be nice to, now that Toyota is on the grid, to, sample that
go for the record
as well. if there is such a thing out there as a record.
Hey,
but,
we can make a record out of anything, particularly in stats world. Matt Payne, I wanted to talk about him. Obviously, that heartbreak on Sunday when that car suddenly had a loss of power and then, boop, that was it. It was out, no points, no Sprint Cup win. Brock Feeney sort of skates on through to kind of have the reverse of Adelaide last year where he felt that blow, obviously with a much greater thing on the line.
Yeah.
But I wanted to focus on Matt Payne because so much is said about his race wins and his podiums and his quality of results and the way he's going about it, the way he drives the car. I think one thing that's going to be really crucial that people haven't quite picked up on for the back end of the year is the importance of the top 10 shootout.
Yep.
There's 9 races to go in the year across the Enduros and the finals. 8 of them will feature a shootout for the grid for them. The one that doesn't Friday in Adelaide, it's just a regular qualifying, no shootout. So I've had a bit of a look with our team at the shootout stats and what they've been able to do. And Matt Payne got into the shootout again on the weekend. So he's the only driver. Have a look at the stats here. Have a look at the graphics. So he's made all 10 shootouts that have been held this year.
Yep.
His average finishing position in these shootouts is now 3.1. Before Queensland, he was at 2.9. He was line ball with Marcus Ambrose. But if you have a look at the quality of performance here, we've got more shootouts this year than I think we've just about ever had in a Supercars championship season. So Shane van Gisbergen in 2014 with Techno, he averages 2.6, but he's only had to be in 5 shootouts to be in all the shootouts that year. Marcus Ambrose, back when there were 13 rounds, 1 qualifying per round, 2.9. That's very handy in his last year with Stones. But Matt's at 3.1, which matches Will Davison from FPR 2012, but there was only 7 that year.
Yeah.
SVG only had 6 in 16. Payne is putting together a season when it comes to the shootouts that is really quite exquisite.
And if you had to say of those 8 remaining shootouts, geez, it would be very surprising if car number 19, Matt Payne, is not in all 8 of them based on the form that he has shown in qualifying up until now. So,
and it's one thing to keep getting into the shootout, but it's another thing to deliver the form,
absolutely,
the performance for the single lap, rather than, every now and then when people make so many shootouts, you would expect that they drop the ball somewhere, they muck up a lap somewhere. Gold Coast, they might trigger a curb sensor or something like that. But his quality of performance is good. And if you look at the way that he's progressed in the shootouts since he's come into the main game from 2023 onwards, his average in shootouts was 5.6 in his first year, 7.3, then 5, now 3.1. But he didn't make all those shootouts every year. This is the first year that he's made all the shootouts so far. So I think that the shootouts are a key component in how the finals and the Enduros will work out, and he's the guy with the form. He doesn't have the most poles over the year so far, but in the format that matters in the back end of the year, he's the guy with the runs on the board. I tell you too, though, when it comes to the bend, who do you think's got the runs on the board, James?
Well, I can answer this question. I know who's got the runs on the board, and that is Brody Kostecki.
Big time.
And they are some serious numbers, and actually sort of creeps up on you when you then deep dive into it to think that he is now on 4 race wins in a row at the bend. Pretty bloody impressive.
Well, this is a streak that's kind of snuck up a bit. So this is most wins in a row at the same track. And there's a few caveats to the guys who are above him on this list that he could match most of them with a win alongside Todd Hazelwood at the bend. Craig Lowndes at Wanneroo, 12 in a row.
Yep.
Remember that there's a year among there, 97, that he didn't race. So that's not part of this 12 in a row. That is in the era where it was start where you finish.
Yeah.
So 20-minute sprints, win a race, start at the pole for the next race, move forward, carry on. HRT, dominant era, Bridgestone tyres. There you go, set it all together. So he gets to 12. So that looks far better than it probably really is. And I would say that if Brody and Todd can win at the bend, and that gets Brody to 5, that equals him with Whincup, Lowndes, Scaife and Feeney. Some of those eras that those guys got these results were progressive grid. Some of them had a few other variations around them. But if Brody gets to 5, so there were 3 wins with Erebus in 23. Yeah. There was no round at the bend in 24, and then the 500 last year. So if he gets to 5 and 2 of them are 500K endurance wins, I would rank his 5 in a row. It's hard to knock Lowndes for that number and for that longevity at that track, but for separate qualifying sessions, for the competitiveness of the championship now, you could mount some form of an argument for saying that Brody's 5 in a row at the bend is just as impressive as Craig's 12 at Wanneroo, for all those reasons I mentioned.
Especially when you throw in the fact that if he does get to 5, 2 of them are going to be with the variable of a co-driver or a long-distance endurance race.
Yeah.
So that does, I think, make it even slightly more impressive.
And none of those streaks on the screen that we've showed with the graphics have any endurance races in them. They're all single-driver events. And, that Craig Lowndes, he had a streak going at Queensland Raceway. I think it was 2011. You would have driven the Jim Beam car that year. We had progressive grid on the Saturday, which was very rare for that era. It was qualify and race for every race. But Mark Scaife's Oran Park's 5, but it betrays Scaife's form at Oran Park over the years, because in that famous, remember the weekend when Mark Larkham and Paul Morris had that massive accident?
Yep.
There was a top 6 reverse for the second race. Now, Russell Ingall won that. So that broke the streak of Scaife's wins at Oran Park, because Scaife then won the next 5 races. So he could have been 9 or 10 in a row at Oran Park in that sort of era as well. So there's a range. Look, lots of people have won 4 in a row. 19 occasions drivers have won 4 in a row, but Brody's the only one with enduros in among that 4 or more. So I think that's an impressive streak that really needs to be given some credos if he manages to get that done. And Todd Hazelwood will play a very big part in how that all unfolds.
Well, would you feel comfortable in saying that based on those stats, based on their form, Brodie's form throughout the year, they really have to be favourites going into the bend?
They have to be right up there. I think there's probably 3, probably now 4 standouts in terms of it's Matt Payne, it's with Will Davison this year, obviously, it's Brodie and Todd, and you'd have to say it's Brock Feeney and Nick Percat, but Brown's back in the mix too now. So they're the 4 cars that you just go to. That's why they're where they are at the championship. Yeah, so
agreed.
I think that's the place to go. I wanted to take you back a little bit too and take a look at Dick Johnson Racing. So we talk about Brodie and Todd winning at the Bend last year, but have a look at this as a little bit of a stat. When it comes to defending an Enduro win, DJR generally haven't been able to do it.
What about big Johnny Davidson there holding the cup?
He's quite happy there. He's got that trophy up and about. He's ready to welcome.
Let's just sit back and imagine that now. Imagine
the promoter of the racetrack on the track
as the car flies across the finish line.
It is a cracking
Imagine
photo.
The outrage.
Well, I tell you what, there's a better photo from a few years earlier when Larry Perkins won in that Bob Jane Team Arts Commodore with great Castrol support, by the way, huge partners of the Undercut. In that great fight with Paul Morris in the BMW, in the VL. There's a photo exactly the same position of John Davison, and I don't know why or how, but maybe we can find it in the future and show it. He's actually been captured giving them the middle finger, the bird. But I'm not sure if that was like just a snap in time or...
Not a fan of LP,
I'm not sure what was going on. We'll have to dig that out. But let's focus in. So 1994, 1995, back-to-back Sandown 500 wins for Dick Johnson and John Bowe. The picture is 1995, which was Father's Day that year, which was a nice touch because Stephen Johnson in the second car finished third with Charlie O'Brien. But every time that DJR's won an endurance race, so Bathurst, Sandown 500, Queensland 500, remember with Radicic and Steve Johnson, they've never backed it up. They've never been able to win 2 in a row. So that's a stat that's on the table. That very much could also change. So we could add to the most wins at one track in a row for Brodie and DJR successfully defending an endurance win.
Fair to say there's a height. Well, I know where I was on both those in 94 and 95. I would have been in the grandstand watching, and I dare say you probably would have been too.
I was at 94 at the last corner though.
Okay.
And 95, filthy that I didn't get to go that year.
Really?
Not happy. Broke a streak of Sandown 500s, was not happy. Not happy.
In the early to mid-90s, I was always parked in the grandstand. So,
you know what was missing from the Sandown 500 in the mid-90s when you were in the grandstand? The Synovus Falcon.
It was, but it never appeared at the Sandown 500.
Didn't have far to go from Toorak.
No, exactly right. Yeah, could have thrown it on the car trailer and dragged it out there, but no, it was never on the radar to do the 500. It was only Bathurst.
Well, that sort of speaks volumes of your old man too, because he was very focused on what happened in October. Speaking of stats here, I've got a good one here for you. Let's take a look at this. This is a hoodoo that's going on. You would think that pole position, James, is the best place to start
generally
a Supercars race or indeed any other race. Have a look at what's unfolding here. The last 12 races in the championship, there's only been one of them, one from pole, which was Matt Payne in Perth at Wanneroo. You've still got to be in the front couple of rows to do the winning, but you don't have to have pole. This is a little bit staggering when you think about it.
Yeah, it is actually. It's a very surprising stat. One that I can sort of only sort of put down to, say for example, at Queensland Raceway, qualifying on pole, you're on the inside of the front row, which is actually the dirty line on the racetrack. So, starts in the early couple of laps are proving to be very crucial. We know that, following a car is becoming more difficult with these Gen 3 cars. Well, not becoming more difficult, is
always
difficult, always has been. It's easy to overheat your front tyres. So getting your track position early on in the race is very critical. And, we saw a couple of times on the weekend, particularly at Queensland Raceway, that car starting out of second. Outside of the front row, but on the racing line, got the better start and was then able to sort of control the first lap and therefore the race. So
it's kind of staggering.
It is, though, yeah.
You've got to go back to 2015 from Pukekohe to Tassie 2016 to find a streak of that sort of thing where 1 from 12 has been able to win it from pole. Let's have a look at Chaz Mostert too, mate, an old teammate of yours from co-driving together in the very colours, the Super Cheap Auto colours that you boys drove together in. His bend is good, but he's not getting to the middle step. Can he break through? And look, so much of that will be really probably on the engines of the Toyota GR Supras heading into the bend. But have a look at the performances here. I mean, he's finding the podium. He knows his way there really well. 7 podiums, but is yet to end up with a win. He's had 4 seconds, 3 thirds. He's also got the all-time record that I think we touched on earlier in the year of most podiums at a certain track without winning. He's had 11 at Townsville without getting a win. So look at the quality of performances here from Van Gisbergen and McLaughlin. Obviously, we had a double round at the Bend in 2020 during COVID. There's been some years where it hasn't been on the calendar, but I mean, he's there or thereabouts. There's some tracks where he's just constantly good. He's just not getting the middle step. And
he's a chance to add to that podium tally when we do get to the Bend in a few weeks' time. So whether he can add a 1 to that win column, time will tell. But, based on the strength of the Ford guys, they're going to be up against it. But, I'd still rather be taking the 7 podiums at a venue Noons without a race win,
It's better than 0 podiums and 0 everything else. Yeah. That's definitely the case. But he's going to be in the mix. Of course, Fabian Coulthard's back to run alongside him as he was with him for the Enduros last year. And, in fact, that Mustang that they drove to win at the car that won the championship, the car that blew up at Bathurst, the car that they drove together at the Bend, is at the Bend. The Mustang's on display there over the course of upcoming months, the championship-winning car, which is pretty cool. Next up here on the Undercut, we've done some stats. It's time to put Moff to work on the workbench and see if he can answer a couple of curly questions. Well, thanks to ACL Race Series, the best bearings that you can get, it's time for us to go on the workbench here with James Moffat. You've had pretty good form, actually, on the workbench so far this year. You've been pretty positive. Yep. Lots of dings. Every time you get the answer right, there's a little ding with the little picture of whatever it might be that comes up. Today, it's most championship race starts in the history of the Australian Touring Car and Supercars Championship. It's one and the same from 1960 all the way through. Most race starts, not round starts, race starts. I would like the top 6 drivers on that list.
Oh, geez. That is a stitch up.
Just start naming names.
Well, Craig Lowndes would be at the top.
He's at the top. He's had 681. He's going to have 2 more at the Bend in Bathurst. He's number 1 on the list.
Yeah, so he's got the asterisk next to him. He's still
going. Put him in bold.
Red ink, as they say with the cricket scorecard.
Yes.
Because he's not out.
Not out. Still going.
Okay. 681, you said.
That's a lot of races.
That is a lot of races. Well, I'd have to say Garth Tanner's got to be up there.
He is so up there. He's number 2, 648.
Well, that's not bad. Okay.
But he's out. He's out.
He's done.
He's no longer a not out. Right. For the first time in many years, he's out.
Yeah, yep. Geez. Oh.
Think about the field at the Bend. Think about who you'll race at Bathurst.
Yep. Oh, I'm trying to.
You got some time before you get there.
Oh, Mark Winterbottom would have to be up there, I would say.
Now you're doing well because he's 3rd. Okay. But he's only 1 behind Garth. So Bend and Bathurst, he will be P2 on the overall order by the time the Enduros are over.
Okay, righto. Well, and then I know because he celebrated his 600 race starts towards the end of last year, Will Davison.
Will Davison is number 5 on 604.
Yeah, okay. So number 5. So I've still got to name
the person who sits at 4 and the person who sits at 6. The person who's in 4 is also a co-driver for the endurance races, and the person at 6 is a former teammate of his.
Co-driver?
Co-driver.
Right, now you really...
He might drive a microphone during the year now more than he drives.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's... You've helped me there too much. That's James Courtney.
James Courtney on 611.
Yep.
And the guy who is 6th will be at Bathurst as well, and probably in your proximity somewhere.
In my proximity?
Of your team's garage.
Right.
Has a connection to your co-driver.
Okay. The Enforcer. Mm-hmm. How could I forget about the Enforcer?
Yes, the muscle, Russell
There we go, Russell Ingle.
588 gets him to 6th overall on the all-time race starts list. So you've done pretty well there to work your way through our race, our ACL Race Series workbench segment. But just quickly, Where is James Moffat on the list?
I have no idea, Noons. I'm definitely not even close to the names we just mentioned.
Look, there's been literally hundreds of drivers competing in this championship over the years. You're 42nd on 241.
Oh, I'm in the top 50.
You'll be 242 by the end of Bathurst. So you're in among there. You're in among there. You're in the game. So you've done well. He's done well, hasn't he, again? Here on the Undercut with thanks to ACL. That's the workbench here. Bringing you some little quirky parts of history and basically putting Perko and Moff to the test every week. But
Am I going better than Perks?
I think it's pretty line ball, really. I think you've both performed pretty well. So we're going to have like a tiebreaker later in the year to kind of settle the situation.
We are rather astute students of the sport.
You do know,
given our parental history in the industry.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. Hey, I was going to ask you quickly, because this episode is going to be out and about in the lead up. It's 20 years on September 8 since Peter Brock left us, which was, it feels like yesterday.
Crazy to think.
That unfolded. And obviously your dad and Peter had such a connection. They were deemed rivals for so long, teammates, friends. They were a lot of different things to one another. But what's your favourite Brock memory, whether it's, as a personal one or something that you saw on TV, or what sticks out as a cool thing that you look back on?
I think from a personal point of view or memory, and it was one of the first times I actually sort of really had a good sort of discussion with Peter, was myself and James Brock were competing in the V8 Ute Series in 2005, and as a sort of a bit of a PR thing, we were racing at the Grand Prix as a support category. So, the two, Alan and Peter and myself and James did a PR call down in the pit lane at the Grand Prix. So, a lot of laughs there and, bit of fun. So that's probably my favourite personal memory. But then, just there's so many Brock clips out there that it's sort of really hard to narrow down to one. But I think probably what used to grab me, particularly when I was younger, was just how his ability to talk on the race cam. And, there's that footage, I think, of him in the VP, and he's muscling the thing around Bathurst, shuffling the wheel, holding it in gear.
And your dad's talking to him as well.
The camera was in the, in the passenger footwell, and it's looking up at him. He's got the open face going on, and he's just like wrestling this thing around the mountain, all the while talking to Mike Raymond and Dad in the commentary booth. So I just used to think, that is just, out of control in many ways. The car looked like it was out of control, and all the while he's, talking us through it. So that's maybe just one of many, many clips out there that, resonates with me.
One of the clips that I know that the people who follow the sport so closely love is that shootout lap from 1991. It's a nice little segue to give a little plug here. The brand new issue, there it is, V8 Sleuth magazine. It's issue 5. Well, we renamed it. It's got to be issue 05, doesn't it, really? The great job that Jack Perkins has done with all the people who've been involved in this to restore this VN Commodore. It's out at all your news agencies very soon. You can order it online from the V8 Sleuth Superstore. The Repco Bathurst 1000 program is also coming out as well. It will be in news agencies in September. You can order it through the online store as well. We will put the link in the notes on YouTube and for the podcast listeners who are wanting to consume that. So the 91 VN has been restored, and we've gone in-depth, Moff, in that restoration, the history of this car in what has become an all Brock issue. So there's plenty to keep you busy for V8 Sleuth magazine fans out there as well. So
make sure you grab yourself a copy.
Do yourself a favour, as Molly would always say. And to just finish off the show, we thought we'd give you some classic Brock. And part of the magazine is a great feature from our team, from Will Dale and Shane Rogers, who put this together, about how the 1987 Bathurst race was won. And there's a critical moment that unfolds in that race. You can read it in the magazine on how the Brock number 10 car got into the position to win the race. Now, in the lead up to recording this show, we've managed to find in the vaults and vision that we've had for a while, but we forgot that we had, and we didn't even know the level of what we had. This is some material that Bev Brock shared with us a few years back, about 10 or 11 years ago. This is Bathurst 1987. It's vision that I don't remember seeing. You've probably never seen before, of Peter in that amazing weekend when Mobile HDT, against the odds, won Bathurst and PB won his 9th great race. Enjoy this. It's a look back through some really rare gold. We'll see you next time here on The Undercut.
Looking at the rain, the sky this afternoon, it just might be a little bit of rain there, so it could be very interesting. Another thing that the Europeans are very concerned about is a standing start. they've never done a standing start in those cars. So first corner is going to be very interesting.
Time to pause now as the Australian Army Band plays the national anthem.
First day. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so.
Given the circumstances of the day and the sort of opposition we confronted with, I guess that was a pretty good effort. I feel very proud of the boys and proud of the team because they've taken a tremendous amount of adversity in the last few weeks, and for them to band together and stick to their guns and say, Brock, we support you, it's just great to see them having something that they can hang their hat on. So tonight we'll be celebrating.
I think they still enjoy theirs.
Yeah, good on you. Thanks for the waves. Yeah.